Welcome back to Technical Knockout, the MMA podcast. I'm your host, as always, Hussein, and today we are going to be talking about UFC 306 at the Sphere in Las Vegas. We have an awesome Bantamweight Championship fight between Sean O'Malley and Merab Dvalishvilli, and let's get right into it. First off, last week we went 4-0 again, keeping up that hot streak going. Let's go, baby. We picked Burns and Brady to go over 2.5. We picked the co-main event as well to go over 2.5. We picked Petrosky, and we picked the Nelson fight to not go to the third round. So 4-0 last week. We keep our hot streak rolling, and let's hope that we can continue it into this weekend's card, which is honestly a very, very good card, featuring Sean O'Malley versus Merab Dvalishvilli at the headliner in the Sphere. So, let's get right into the main event, because it's a fight that I think is on a lot of people's minds at the moment, and in my opinion is a very exciting matchup, one that I've been kind of going back and forth on as far as the prediction goes, because there's just so many variables when it comes to this fight, and I really see it being a blowout on either side. It's either going to be the Merab Dvalishvilli show, where he's able to kind of, just control Sean O'Malley over and over, take him down, put the pace on him, and beat him up, as he's been able to do to everybody he's fought. I mean, the only person that he really ran into a brick wall with was Jose Aldo. No shame there. But even still, he won that fight on all the judges' scorecards. I mean, obviously, he lost his first couple fights in the UFC against Frankie Saenz and Ricky Simone, but we haven't really seen him taste defeat since then. On a very long winning streak as Merab. Sean O'Malley, on the other hand, seems to have reached a level that a lot of people thought that he wouldn't be able to get to. When he initially came into the UFC, I think a lot of people thought that he was kind of, flash in the pan, or, maybe like in the same, cut from the same cloth as like a Sage Northcutt or Paige Van Zandt, somebody who the UFC really wanted to be a star but wouldn't have the skills to reach that. And now we've seen that he certainly does have the skills to reach that. I mean, it all started when he fought Petr Yan, and a fight that everybody thought that Yan was going to smoke him in. He ended up putting on a very good showing for himself. A lot of people still felt like Yan won that fight, but regardless, it was much more competitive than people were giving Sean credit for leading into the fight. So I think he kind of raised a lot of stock there. On the O'Malley side, you have very crisp striking, very powerful punches, great shot selection. The guy really knows where and when to place his shots, and more than anything, he is an expert at managing the distance. He's able to put those shots down in spots, making the open range, or the void, as Demetrius Johnson would say, very dangerous for his competitors. We saw him knock out Aljamain Sterling in a fight that a lot of people thought Sterling would win. We saw him put a masterclass on Chito Vera, beating the shit out of him over 5 rounds. And this weekend he draws Merab Dvalishvilli, who has been uber tough in his UFC career, and has shown a very, very dominant grappling game, very high cardio pace, and relatively decent striking to boot. I wouldn't call him a knockout striker by any means, but he does know how to, put the pace on guys and, land combos and back people up. But ultimately, his wrestling is really what he wants to get to in every fight. Merab is pretty solid on top, but kind of cut from the same cloth as somebody like Mateusz Gamrot, where he really wants to take you down over and over. He's not trying to beat you up with his one takedown a round. It's not like Khabib, where once he takes you down, you can't get up. He's more like, I'm going to shoot on you 40, 45 times, and you're going to have to defend. You're going to defend a couple of those, but when I do get my takedowns, they're just going to keep sapping your energy, and Merab's not going to get tired, so he's just going to keep that pace up. Very much Colby Covington, very much Mateusz Gamrot. Merab Dvalishvilli, I think, is the highest level of that archetype of fighter. That being said, comparative to guys like Colby and Gamrot, Merab does take a lot of damage coming inside. He does take a lot of damage when he's trying to approach his opponent and get into that space where he can really do some of his best work. We've seen him get dropped by guys like Marlon Moraes. We've seen him get rocked by pretty much everybody that he fights in the first round, hits him at least clean once, or hits him clean at least once, I should say. Henry Cejudo landed a pretty meaningful shot on him in his last fight. Again, these fights all end with Merab dominating his opponent, but that first round is a little scary sometimes, And against somebody like Sean O'Malley, who is as dangerous in the first round as anybody, I have a lot of pause picking Merab in this fight, I think, we haven't seen Merab fight somebody as big as O'Malley, and he's had trouble making that, move into the range, like I said, against guys like Marlon Moraes and, Henry Cejudo and people like that who aren't huge for the weight class by any means. So I'm a little concerned whenever he does fight somebody who is a longer, rangier guy, how he's going to be able to traverse that void without taking massive damage. If he had fought somebody like Cheeto or Sandhagen, I would be a lot more confident picking him in this spot because I would see how he does against somebody that's a lot taller and longer than him. But he just hasn't fought somebody like that in the UFC. And even if he did fight Cheeto or Sandhagen, neither of those guys are as dangerous as O'Malley is when it comes to that first round and when it comes to making people, they're punishing people with for their mistakes with his punches. You know what I mean? Like Sandhagen and Cheeto. Cheeto especially, he hits very hard, but he's not a first-round fighter. He's very much a slow starter. So if they did fight Cheeto and Merab, I could definitely see Merab getting the better of that matchup. Against Sandhagen, I think it would be a little bit tougher, but even still, Sandhagen doesn't have the stopping power in his hands to really make Merab think twice about shooting in on him. I think he's more threatening with his knees and kicks than anything as far as damage goes. But O'Malley brings both of those tools, or all three of those tools to the table. He's very dangerous in the first round. He's very dangerous with his hands. And he could throw up knees and kicks like that too. So I think this fight is really going to come down to what happens in the first round. If Merab is able to get in on O'Malley without O'Malley clipping him bad, I really don't see it happening, but if he is able to do that, he's going to drown Sean O'Malley, bad, really bad. In the second, third round, we're going to see O'Malley be really gasping for air. I'd be surprised if Merab gets a finish because he's really not much of a finisher. It's only guys that get super tired or are very chinny that he's able to get the finish on. But I think it's very likely that if Merab can get to him in the first round, can take him down in the first round, we're going to see O'Malley start to wither and wither and wither. And it's going to look like a Merab Dvalishvilli fight where he wins by 50-45 or 50-44, beating the shit out of his opponent in the third, fourth, and fifth round, and really just, putting a pace on him. Alternatively, if Merab is not able to enter that space with O'Malley easily in the first round, I can see O'Malley dropping some really big punches on him in that first exchange, or in the first few exchanges, I should say, and eventually finding that knockout in the first or second round. So, it really depends on how both guys approach this fight in the early goings. And there are a couple of X factors coming into this fight that I think are playing into O'Malley's favor, to be honest. Primarily being that Merab had a big cut over his eye about a week ago. He told everybody, he told Dana White, he told everybody, he put it on his Instagram. And, there's a famous clip of Dana saying, wow, our guys are so fucking stupid. You never hear about this in boxing that, somebody posts that they got a cut in training. You know what I mean? And the other thing being that there is a pretty, I would say 60 to 75% chance that Merab is dealing with a staph infection right now. There was a photo of him that surfaced in his fight gear for promotional material where there's a hole on his right arm or his left arm, something like that. And if you know anything about staph infection, which I'm sure you do if you're watching this podcast and you're an MMA fan, staph infection is very draining on your cardio. and affects your ability to train. Now, Merab certainly has a lot of cardio that he can be drained on, or that he won't be too beat up if he loses a fraction of his cardio, considering that he has infinite cardio. But that might affect his ability to take punishment. And there's a famous saying. I think it was Cody Garbrandt versus TJ Dillashaw, where Cody told TJ, like, yeah, you can do all the strength and conditioning you want, but you can't condition that chin of yours. And then after the fight, TJ ended up knocking him out, and he did go through some adversity in that fight. And TJ said, like, yeah, like, you can't condition your chin, but if you have good conditioning, if you have good cardio, if you have good endurance, when you get hit, you recover faster. So if Merab, if his conditioning, if his endurance is compromised in this fight from the staph infection, he might not be able to recover from that first shot that O'Malley almost certainly is going to land. Because, like I said, Merab gets rocked in pretty much every first round that he has. I mean, except for the Piotr Jan fight where, Jan is a very slow starter himself. And in the Jose Aldo fight, I don't think Aldo was able to really catch him. But a lot of these fights, he gets caught in the first round and he has to go through adversity. If he's compromised from the staph infection, he might take that shot and not be able to recover as well as he usually does, and O'Malley can pour it on him and finish him there. So I think that those X factors, the staph infection and the cut over Merab's eye, are both very prevalent. I think they're not something that we should overlook when we make our prediction later in the video. But fuck it, I'm just gonna get the prediction right now. I really feel like Sean O'Malley's gonna knock him out, man. I don't know. I want Merab to win. I love Merab. I'm not a big Sean O'Malley fan, but I just feel like O'Malley is very dangerous in that open space. He's very dangerous in the first round, especially, and that's where Merab has been caught before. And I feel like if O'Malley catches Merab coming in, he's going to put his lights out. And if he doesn't put his lights out immediately, he's going to hurt him really bad and then hurt him again in the second round and finish him there. So I'm going to take O'Malley first or second round KO. I think it's a good bet. I'm sure the odds are juiced right now. I think I saw O'Malley at knockout at like plus 250 or something like that, which I feel like is his most prevalent way of winning this fight. I don't see him winning if this fight goes to decision. I think Merab's pace and cardio will do him wonders as the fight goes on. It's not impossible that O'Malley doesn't do more damage in 3 rounds and gets the decision, but I really feel like the judges these days are very much in favor of that kind of cardio-centric smothering style. So if the fight does go to decision, I expect Merab to pick up a lot of rounds and win there. But if O'Malley can catch him early, which I feel like he definitely can, I would not be surprised if O'Malley is the first person to knock out Merab Dvalishvilli on Saturday night. Or at least, knock him out in the UFC. I don't know if he's been knocked out before the UFC. No losses by knockout. O'Malley could very well be the first guy to do that. All right, so let's go down the rest of the card because there's a lot to discuss here. In the co-main event, you have Alexa Grasso versus Valentina Shevchenko in a trilogy fight for the women's flyweight belt. First fight, Alexa Grasso was a huge underdog, and she won by submission. It was awesome. We were not very confident in her chances going into that fight. I think a lot of people overlooked her in that matchup, but she came super prepared and had all the tools to beat Shevchenko, and she did. In the rematch, it was a much closer fight, and my opinion, Grasso did enough to win. A lot of other people thought that Shevchenko won, but the judges ended up scoring it a draw, funnily enough. There wasn't really an argument to be made for the draw, considering there wasn't a really clear 10-8 round, but the fans and the media were so split on the pick. I feel like nobody was really upset with the draw because it was a fight that could have gone either way. In one FC or in Pride scoring, that fight certainly would have been a draw. So no shame in that being a draw. And now we get the trilogy fight this weekend. Valentina Shevchenko, obviously very decorated martial artist, has, X amount of Muay Thai championship titles. I want to say like 18 or something like that. She's, defended her UFC belt a record like 5 or 6 times as well. And now she's coming up on 36 years old and is facing a young, hungry Alexa Grasso, who has been in the cage with her for, the better part of an hour, going to the 4th round in the first fight and, going to the decision in the next one, 45 minutes or so in the cage with her. Plenty of time. to learn about Shevchenko. And Shevchenko, in my opinion, is a fighter that has not really changed a ton in her career, at least not in her MMA career. She kind of has that same archetype that she always has. She's going to throw kicks from the outside. She's going to jump in with Superman punches. She's going to go for head and arm throws if you get in tight with her, which has cost her some fights. Or not some fights, but... Well, it cost her the fight with Grasso the first time, and cost her the decision in the second one. So she's not the... I don't want to say she's not the best decision maker, but she has made some bad decisions in these fights before. And I think the book is kind of out on Valentina. It's not like because you know what she's going to do, you're going to be able to stop her from doing that. But Grasso certainly has shown that she is well prepared for this matchup and has all the tools to beat Valentina. Considering that she finished her and the second fight was a draw, I would say that Grasso is up going into this fight. So, Valentina's not getting any younger. I think she fought to the best of her abilities in the last fight, and that ended up being a draw. Again, a lot of people argued that she won the fight, and I don't think that there's anything wrong with thinking that she won the fight, but I felt like Grasso did win that matchup with the knees to the head, and I think it was the fourth round was the decision maker. Either way, I feel like Grasso's going to get it done this weekend. I'm not sure if it will be by finish again. I'm not sure if it'll be by decision, but I just feel like the trends are kind of meeting at a convergence point. I want Grasso to win, honestly, because I want the division to move forward. If Shevchenko wins, they would be 1-1-1, and I think there'd be an argument to make a fourth matchup, and we'd be in that kind of Davison Figueiredo, Brandon Moreno territory, which I don't want to see at women's flyweight because we have a lot of hungry contenders on the rise at women's flyweight. We have Natalia Silva, who looked amazing last weekend. We have Manon Fiorot, who looked great against Erin Blanchfield. There's, women like Rose Namajunas and Macy Barber and, Erin Blanchfield, like we just mentioned, who is coming off a loss but still right there. A lot of these girls are fighting for their chance at the top, and I think the quicker we kind of brush Valentina out of title contention, or at least out of the championship circle as it stands, I think the quicker we get onto some very fresh matchups in this division, in a division that has a ton of talent at the top. So I think it's a great fight for women's flyweight, and I think Alexa Grasso kind of has the opportunity here to usher in a new era at women's flyweight, and I'd like to see that happen, But regardless of what I want to happen, I do feel like the fighters are trending in opposite directions. I think Valentina is getting older. She's, her style is very much reliant on her reaction timing. She's very much a counter fighter. So she's very reliant on her reaction timing and her athleticism, and that wanes with age, as we all know. And, it's not like she's ancient. She's only 36, but she has so many fight years. She's been professionally fighting since she was, 16. So she's really had, 21 years at the top, 20 years at the top pretty much. Alexa Grasso, on the other hand, I believe is only 31 or 32. Let me just double-check that to make sure. Yeah, she's 31. So, she's coming right into her prime. Doesn't have the insane wear on the tires that Shevchenko does, and I feel like she might not be able to rule this division for a long, long time, but I think she is a good matchup for Shevchenko, and I believe she's going to get it done this weekend. I don't think the odds are super juicy on here, so I probably am not going to actually bet on the fight because I do feel like it can go either way. Obviously, the last fight looked like it could have went either way, but I think Grasso is going to be able to make the adjustments and has more gas in the tank, more tools in the toolbox to be able to win a clear-cut decision or just, maybe even get a finish at some point in this fight. So I'm going to go with Grasso here in the co-main event. Going down the card, we have Brian Ortega versus Diego Lopes. This is an awesome matchup. I love this fight. It was supposed to happen a couple weeks ago or a month or so ago, but Ortega unfortunately got injured right before the fight, and Lopes fought Dan Ige on an hour's notice or some crazy shit like that. A few hours notice. Lopes picked up the victory in there in a very competitive fight, but again, he was not preparing for somebody like Ige. He was preparing for a tall grappler, not a small striker like Ige. So, all the credit in the world for Diego Lopes for picking up that victory on short notice. A complete badass performance there. That's the cat opening the door right there. Let me shut the door real quick. Lena, I'm recording the podcast. You want to hang out? You can hang out. Alright. Sorry about that. That is Lena, my beautiful kitty. I don't know if you guys can see her on the camera right now. Hey, girl. She's named after Lena Landsberg, Swedish MMA fighter, who made us a lot of money in a bit of a stretch between fighting Macy Chiasson and Tanya Evinger. So we got the cat around that time and felt fitting to give her the name Lena. So all right, enough backstory on the kitty. Back to Brian Ortega and Diego Lopes. Stylistically, this is a tough fight because Ortega is a much better boxer than he used to be, but he's still not a devastating striker, I wouldn't say. He's very much methodical, moves forward, hits hard, and has a really good chin. And I think both guys, their best tool is their jiu-jitsu. When you do see fights like this where both guys have great jiu-jitsu, they kind of cancel each other out. I don't expect either guy to really be shooting for takedowns on the other because they both know how dangerous they are. If anything, Ortega might be pushing the grappling, but I feel like Diego has more than enough jiu-jitsu experience and credentials to be able to defend the submission attempts from Ortega unless he's completely compromised or hurt. So for me, it really comes down to the striking and the athleticism. And when I spell it out like that, it's hard for me to pick against Diego Lopes in this fight. Ortega is somebody who has kind of relied on their chin in their career. We used to talk about third-round Ortega. We used to say, you're winning a Brian Ortega fight, you're beating him up, and that's when he's in his best space. When he made a career in his early goings off getting beat up and then coming back against guys like Thiago Tavares, against guys like Clay Guida, Renato Moicano, so many fights. That was his archetype coming in, in his first few years in the UFC was getting beat up and then coming back. It was only when he started fighting guys that were a little bit older, a little bit more over the hill, that he was able to have dominant performances. Guys, against guys like Frankie Edgar, against guys like Cub Swanson, against guys like the Korean Zombie, And then when he fought people who were at the actual top of the division, who are divisional goats, so there's no shame in losing to them, Max Holloway and Alexander Volkanovski, he got absolutely smoked. Outside of a couple moments against Volkanovski, that was completely one-way traffic. And Holloway, we don't even need to talk about it. Everybody saw it. He broke records on Ortega's face. So since then, Ortega's been kind of here and there. In his last fight against Yair Rodriguez, he was getting absolutely dog-walked on the feet and then was able to take down Rodriguez. And Rodriguez's jiu-jitsu is so bad on the bottom, so Ortega was able to find that submission, I believe it was. Let me just double-check that. Yeah, it was an arm triangle. I think in that fight, I saw, maybe I'm alone in this, but I saw a Brian Ortega who has been through the ringer between the injuries in his career, between the damage that he soaked up in those Holloway and Volkanovski fights. It just seems like he's not the guy that he used to be. And again, with a style not similar to Shevchenko, completely different style to Shevchenko, but similar in the sense that they both rely on their athleticism or toughness. When you get older, those things start to go. And I'm a little bit worried about him fighting somebody who is as dangerous and threatening in every phase of the fight as Diego Lopes. If the fight stays on the feet, I expect Lopes to be a little bit faster. I expect a lot faster. I expect him to be a lot faster and to hit a little bit harder. Ortega might have better fundamentals when it comes to his boxing approach, but Lopes has shown to have a great chin and great power, and I think he can definitely stun Ortega or at least put the pace on him in several positions in this fight. And I expect Lopes to get this victory, but, and this is a huge but, we have seen Lopes gas out. We saw him look pretty tired in that third round against Ige. And, there's been other fights where he looked worse for wear in the second or third round. So, if that does happen, we might see the return of the mythical fighter third round Brian Ortega. And if Ortega gets Lopes very tired in the third round, either by way of taking a bunch of punishment and doing the Homer Simpson approach of getting hit so much that the opponent gets exhausted, we could see Ortega start to turn this fight around in that second and third round. And if that happens, if he's able to, finish Lopes in the third, I'll be very surprised, but I wouldn't be super surprised to see him win that third round. That being said, I do feel like Lopes more times than not will win this fight. I probably, if they fought 10 times, I'd probably pick Lopes to win 8 of those times. So I'm relatively confident in Lopes getting it done this weekend, and I think I'm going to take him. Probably over 1.5, but I don't know. He is a quick finisher too, so it could be sooner than that. But either way, I like Lopes in this matchup. Next fight, you have Daniel Zellhuber versus Esteban Ribovics. This is a great fight. I'm very excited for this fight. Daniel Zellhuber looked incredible in his last couple of performances. We saw him kind of, not reach his full potential against Trey Ogden, a fight that, a lot of people thought he should run through him. But since then, he's on a 3-fight win streak, and one of those being the fight of the night against Francisco Prado. So very good stretch for Zellhuber here. And again, this is this fight at the Sphere is on Mexican Independence Day. It's billed Noche UFC. So, it's very much a fight for the Mexican fighters, it's very much a night for the Mexican fighters to show out. And Zellhuber is essentially at the helm of what is, a young Mexican MMA field. And he picks on Esteban Ribovics, who also is a great fighter in his own right and has some awesome performances in the UFC. Maybe not reach the heights or hype that Zellhuber has, but coming off his last fight where he knocked out Terrence McKinney in the first round, knocked him out cold. It was crazy. I think there's a lot of hype coming in on Esteban Ribovics. Both guys are pretty young. I like Zellhuber because I think he has more tools in this matchup. I think he can rely on the wrestling a bit more. I think his jiu-jitsu is certainly better than Ribovics. On the feet, I think it's going to be a super exciting matchup, but I do feel like Ribovics is a little bit more explosive and reliant on his power, whereas Zellhuber kind of finds his spots and is a little slicker. So I'm going to side with Zellhuber here. I think he's going to be able to get it done. I'm not really uber confident in this pick because I do feel like this has the potential to be like a fight of the night kind of situation where both guys take lumps out of each other, but I think Zellhuber should be able to get it done. Next, you have Ronaldo Rodriguez versus Ode Osborne. Ronaldo Rodriguez, not very good. Lost in the Contender Series and got signed to the UFC for this fight card. Picking up a fight against Ode Osborne, who's also not looked great. I think he got submitted in his last fight, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just double check that. Submitted in his last 2 fights. So obviously that is a big area of weakness for him is his grappling. I'm really not confident on either side here, so I'm probably going to lay away. If there's a big underdog on one side, I'll take him because I don't really have faith in either of these guys that much. That being said, I think Osborne does have more experience at this level. I mean, he certainly does than Ronaldo Rodriguez, so I wouldn't be surprised to see him get the victory. If he's over plus 150, I'll take him. Irene Aldana versus Norma Dumont is an awesome fight in which I expect Norma Dumont to try to use her wrestling to stifle the dangerous striking of Aldana, the volume approach of Aldana. I'm really excited for that matchup, and I think it has the makings to be a women's MMA classic. Ignacio Bahamondes versus Manuel Torres. This is a fight where Manuel Torres might have his coming out party here. He's looked amazing in the UFC so far. I believe he's with the Fighting Nerds, if I'm not mistaken. So the guy is part of that camp with Kyle Borralho and John Silva, where they're just looking incredible. He takes on Ignacio Bahamondes here, who looks like an absolute monster. Very tall, very long for the division, hits hard, has great striking, but has kind of been hit or miss these last few, or throughout his career, I should say. Against Ludovic Klein, he really got dog walked. Ludovic Klein looks amazing. I mean, that's a guy that we need to keep an eye out for as far as, top 10 potential goes. But Manuel Torres certainly has that build as well. He's very athletic. He hits very hard, and he moves forward the whole fight. So, Bahamondes is going to have his hands full here. This is another fight that I think could be fight of the night for sure. I'm not really confident on either side. I might take the over 1.5 because I think both guys are super tough. But yeah, this is a fight that is going to be one to watch 100%. Yasmin Uruguay is fighting Ketlin Souza. This should be Uruguay's coming out party. Ketlin Souza has not looked incredible in the octagon. She's 1-1, beating Marnik Man, who I really feel like is not UFC material. So Uruguay should have an easy night here, but we'll see what happens. Edgar Chairez versus Joshua Van. This is a very, very quick comeback from Joshua Van after getting knocked out cold against Charles Johnson in his last fight. I would be confident in picking Van here if that didn't happen. So, I would be confident in picking Joshua Van if that fight hadn't happened so recently. but Charez is not very much a devastating puncher. He's more of a grappling threat. So I think this is a good fight for both guys, but I am going to side with Charez just because that knockout loss from Van. I really feel like this is mismanagement of his career. I love Joshua Van, and I want to see him go to the top, but he's a guy that takes damage in the first round and comes back in the second and third. He could definitely do that against Charez, but I'm just a little bit wary on his chin after getting knocked out and beat up so bad against Charles Johnson. Like 2 months ago or whatever that was. Then Raul Rosas Jr. has a layup matchup for him against Orichi Lang, who cannot grapple. Fully expect Rosas Jr. to get the submission here in the first or second round, and that's where I'll be laying down the chalk. So, all right, so going down the betting slip on this card, we're going to start at the top. I'm going to take O'Malley first or second round KO. I'm going to take Alexa Grasso money line. I'm going to go over 1.5 in the Ortega-Lopes fight, but I do feel like I'm going to side towards Lopes ultimately. I'll take Zellhuber. And I'll take Rosas by submission in the first or second round. So going down altogether, we have O'Malley KO first or second, Grasso money line, over 1.5 in Ortega-Lopes, Zellhuber money line, and Rosas Jr. by submission in the first or second. Thank you very much for watching, y'all. I appreciate you sticking through and checking us out. We have a great historical piece on Genki Sudo up on the YouTube, on the Spotify. It's titled "The Most Interesting Man in MMA History," where we talk about Genki Sudo's life and his career inside and outside of the cage. And we have a great night of fights on Saturday, so hopefully we can keep our winning ways going, and the UFC can keep their entertainment going, because last week was pretty good, honestly. So hopefully we can keep the ball rolling and have an awesome fight card this weekend. And then next week, we're going to be talking about Moicano versus St. Denis. Oh, it's actually in 2 weeks. But yeah, we'll talk about that next. Thank you very much, y'all. I appreciate it, and y'all have a lovely day. Thanks for listening. Peace.